What is cold calling? And do you really understand what it is? And is it effective in today's market with all the social media applications? There are two reasons why people are not successful at cold calling. Number one is not only the fear of it, but also they don't have the right training. So the way you train is the way you're going to perform. Does that make sense? Also, people intend to focus on making the sale instead of focusing on the process to the sale and focusing on the customer. So what I'm going to share with you today, there are 4 steps to becoming successful at cold calling. Number one, that's very important, you have to understand what cold calling is. Number 2 is once you understand, you have to learn and overcome the fear of cold calling. Number 3 is how to overcome the fear of cold calling and being successful at cold calling. And number 4 is the results from understanding, overcoming your fear, learning to cold call, and what the results will be. Now, before we dig into the topic, let's go to the introduction. So, what is cold calling? I'm going to explain it to you in simple terms. Cold calling is when you take the initial phone call to call either an individual, a business owner, or other that don't know who you are not expecting your phone call. So you're soliciting them for your product and services that they're not even requesting your product or services, don't even know about your product or services. But your job before you do the cold call is to be prepared and have ammunition on why they need to listen to you and why you have a product and services that can help their business. And when you're armed with that and you understand cold calling, then the fear is eliminated because you gain confidence. Does that make sense? So the bottom line is this. Before you go into cold calling, make sure you know who your target audience is. Make sure you have the right product and services for those particular prospects. Don't just go there and start making cold calls. That's what cold calling is. That's where it all begins. That's where the true successful salespeople start, and they never let it go. Does that make sense, guys? So number 2 is, what are the fears? What fears do people have because of cold calling? Okay, now I'm going to share some statistics with you why that is and how you can overcome that. One of the things is acceptance. You have to accept that cold calling is part of sales. You can't be afraid of it. Does that make sense? You know, one of my biggest fears that I have is swimming. Why? Because I almost drowned twice as a kid. So I still have a phobia of swimming. I'm afraid of swimming. I have more confidence being in a cage with a lion than I am swimming. It's crazy, but that's true. So you got to have acceptance, not only for yourself, but making other prospects acceptable to you calling them. That takes skills. The second thing is, a lot of calls are terminated or hung up on. So people get afraid of being rejected, being hung up on. That's just part of the process. But there are ways to overcome that. It's like anything else. When you first start, you don't know what you don't know. But once you start to learn and you understand, you become more proficient at it, right? Number 3 is verbal attacks. You know, you get businesses and people that are frustrated. They get a lot of phone calls from other people. But once you understand how that works, that becomes a non-issue in cold calling. I know it is for me. So the verbal attacks intimidate people and they scare people off. Number 4 is there's a very low percent success rate, about 2% of success rate in cold calling. Why is that? I believe it's because there's not a lot of right training. People are not training. They're taking it for granted. And they get bad habits. And number 2, they're worrying more about the selling and the sale instead of the process to the sale. So let me give you an example. Number 5, There was a study done out of 5 deals closed out of every 250 cold calls or contacts that you speak with. That's a very low ratio. That's one of the reasons why people don't like cold calling. Does that make sense, guys? But here's the good news. There is a way to overcome these fears if you're willing to make the commitment so that you can be successful at cold calling. Step number 3. This is how to overcome the fear of cold calling. There's 6 steps you need to implement to learn how to do it so that you can overcome cold calling. Because I'm telling you, if you implement cold calling in your sales career, you're going to see your sales increase exponentially. So the first thing you have to do is you have to have the right training. That's the problem today. People are not trained properly in cold calling. Why? Because they have the fear of it. So when you have the right training, you're going to perform the right way. Anything in life, anything in business, the way you train is the way you're going to perform. No ways about it. So if you train wrong, you're going to perform wrong. If you cold call wrong, you're not going to perform right. You're not going to have good sales. You're not going to have sales at all. That leads to discouragement. Does that make sense? Number 2 is you have to learn to combine today's technology with good old cold calling. Now, technology changes quite often. Cold calling does not. Now, here's what I mean by that. In the old days, there was a thing called yellow pages. Today, there's more yellow pages than ever before. All the modern day platforms like search engines, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you can name it. There's a bunch of them. And they have businesses. So you have access to more businesses to do more sales if you apply cold calling along with modern technology. And the number one thing you should target are your followers, your subscribers. They're there. They know who you are. They're ready for you. It's up to you to take the initial cold call. Now, number 3 is how do you target the followers, the subscribers? Is once they know who you are, is it really a cold call? In your mind it may be, but it's really more of a warm call. You just can't have the fear of being rejected. So you have to target your followers and you have to take the right approach. Number 4 is what I call a social media conversion strategy. I created this template and this process about 2.5 years ago. Now it's running like a machine. Why? Because I take a mutual fund approach to my social media strategy. Every individual platform has different types of people in it, different age categories, different mindsets, right? So it's like a stock. Those of you who have a mutual fund or an IRA or retirement account know that it's just a bunch of stocks in a fund. Well, I take the same approach to social media. I treat every platform different. In other words, I target the followers. I still approach them through cold calling, but I have a different mindset to each and every one of them so that I know what my success rate can be. So it's a social media conversion strategy, number 4. Number 5 is daily perfect practice. You have to practice every single day. And the more you do the right practice, the more success you will have. That's just the way it is. Just like anything else. You have to learn to enjoy it. Cold calling, to me, I can't see myself not cold calling. I don't really need to do it, but I do it because I enjoy doing it. More important, I love teaching it because it's duplicatable. And number 6 is by being effective in cold calling, what's going to happen is this. You're going to build a very strong pipeline, which means your follow-up call is going to have more success than your initial call, which means you're not going to get a lot of one-call closes. Once you get to a certain level, you will have a lot of one-call closes, but you're going to have a more effective follow-up closing ratio than the initial call. That's the double, what I call the parlay. Once you learn how to cold call, you're going to build a strong pipeline. Does that make sense? So these are the 6 tools how to overcome the fear of cold calling. All right, step number 4, the moment you've been waiting for. What kind of results can you expect by learning not only cold calling, I call it the art of cold calling because it is an art and it's a beautiful art, But by using my social media conversion strategy, there's some incredible results. And here's the bottom line. It's not how many sales you make. It's about the quality of the relationships you develop through the sales. Does that make sense? So you got to really think about that. But let me share these type of results you can expect if, one, you learn the art of cold calling. Number two, you use my social media conversion strategy. Number one is you can take that industry conversion ratio of 2% and you can increase your conversion ratio by at least 30%, meaning out of every 10 cold calls you make, you can close 3 of those leads. Think about that. 30% versus 2%. The second result is you will develop a strong and powerful pipeline. Pipelines are very important. I think a lot of salespeople ignore that. But I think if you develop the right cold call, and if you got 10 people you speak with, and you convert 3 out of 10, it doesn't mean the next 7 won't buy from you. You just, excuse me, you have to know how to work them and make sure that they're qualified and that you build a strong bond with them. Number 3 is you're going to have a higher conversion ratio in the follow call than you will your initial call. But in order for the follow call to be effective, your cold call has to be solid and strong. Number 4 is you will increase your monthly sales volume. The percent is going to be depending on you. The volume, as far as the amount of money you sell, will depend on the price of your services or product. But either way, when you convert a high conversion ratio on the initial call and the follow call, your sales volume will increase exponentially. And more importantly, you're going to be consistent in converting leads into sales and prospects into customers, and then customers into relationships. And number 5, I hear this a lot, but there's not a lot of that happening. What I call win-win-win relationships. In order to create win-win relationships, you have to always make it about the customer first. Now, what do I mean by win-win-win situation? First of all, the customer has to win. How do they win? You give them results. You produce results. You solve their problem. How does the company win? If you're a salesman for a company, the company wins because they get a good customer that gets repeat business. And how do you win as a salesman? You become valuable not only to your customer, but to your company. And you win because you generate commissions and you increase your value. That's what a true win-win situation should be. Is that what you're doing? And if not, then the way you develop that is you must learn and embrace and make cold calling part of your business, part of your selling process, and part of who you are. And these are the 4 steps. I want to thank you all for sharing your time with me. I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscription button below. Do share your comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. And share the video with others. Till we speak again, I say goodbye for now. This is Paul Cruz with the Martial Arts of Selling. Have a very successful day. Bye for now.